Hi, I'm Rosemary Armeo, and this is On the Brink, and we are going to have fun. This is an episode not like most of them about gloom and doom and politics, but it's about dating. You may recall at the end of season 3, we had some women on talking about their good experiences, but mostly bad with dating. And for equal time, I promised to bring on some men, and that is what I am doing in this chapter. So let me introduce them briefly, and then we will get into it. First, we have Jeff Wilkin. Jeff is a friend of mine. He was a reporter, a features reporter for many years at the Schenectady Gazette. The Daily Gazette in Schenectady is what we say now. Sorry, I'm old school. He also taught with me at the University of Albany. He's an adjunct professor. We have Amar Sayeed, who I just met recently. He is a sophomore in political science at Bard College at Simon's Rock. That's in Great Barrington in Massachusetts. He's studying politics and world affairs and history and computer science and artificial intelligence and cars. He doesn't actually study all that. Those are all his interests. His official majors, political science. He also is a world traveler and liver. He's lived in 5 different countries in his very young life. He represents the Generation Z on this program. Jeff, I should mention, is my generation. That's the boomers. And last we have Zach Grady. Some of you may recognize him in the past. He is our producer, but he is not a producer today. He is a participant and a representative of the millennial generation. All of these guys are single. They have never married. And we are going to ask them some questions, the same questions that we had the women talk about. And I am very curious about this. I never have understood men, even though I was married to one for a time. I have 3 sons. They're very, very strange creatures to me. So I get to ask you some questions now and see if it's different between the generations or the time periods or whatever. So let's start with the first question, one of the first questions that we asked our women, which is, you can tell I'm a journalist. What is the worst date you were ever on and why? Start with you, Amar.
Worst date I was ever on and why? Oh, so
Worst date. The worst
okay,
date.
this is an interesting one. So I went to high school in Chicago, yeah, and I pull up on a date. This is my sophomore year of high school, and I pull up in my dad's car, which is like a slightly nicer sports car. Anyways, I show up there. I sit down for dinner. First thing she asks me is, "Do you have strawberry kush?" Asking me for weed, like before I even introduced myself. And I said I need to use the bathroom. And I got up, got in the car, and drove off. And yeah.
The shortest date you ever had, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Zachary Grady, what's the worst date you were ever on?
Not that one, because that would have been the start of probably the best date I was ever on. Um, I mean, I've been on a few online dates where for some reason, and well, I get it as well, with just society and culture nowadays, but I've had people where they bring a friend on a date.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I
God.
hate that shit.
It's one of those things, and like I said, I get it. I mean, because I even to this point, when I go out on online dates, I still get nervous. Am I getting catfish? Is this person the actual person that is on there? So I would say probably one where it's not just the person I'm on a date with.
That's that would fit. And finally, the boomer representative. Jeff, what's the worst date you were ever on?
Well, the worst date panel, I guess, had to be a time when it was a kind of an online thing, as I recall, a couple of years ago, where we were going to meet at a restaurant, and I like to show up early. In the journalism game, we always try to tell people to be on time. So
Hmm.
I was there on time, a good 15 or 20 minutes beforehand. You're going into the restaurant, you're waiting 15, 20 minutes to a half hour. You go out to your
Oh.
car, try to contact this person. Do I got the right spot? Have I got the right place? And it goes right to voicemail. Finally, she shows up about 45 minutes to an hour late. We finally go into the place, and all she's doing is talking about her money problems. This is just a for drinks type of thing, and talking about the money problems, personal problems, and
Oh.
we're going to talk about personal problems. We had our drink, which lasted about an hour. And I said, "Well, it was awfully nice meeting you." And she said, "You mean we're not staying for dinner?" I said, "No, I don't think we're staying for dinner tonight." So it was a deal where you kind of walked to your car kind of quickly and said, "Boy, that was a kind of a tough night."
You escaped. You escaped. I will ask later about great dates, but right now, let me ask, what's the best way to meet or to find someone good to date? Zach, what do you think?
Wouldn't know, or else I wouldn't be on this damn podcast.
Ooh.
All right. Well, what places have you tried? You tried.
I mean, it's just
God.
this. I mean, at this point in time, and this is, I think, where a lot of people are probably noticing, just the way that people are invested in their phones and invested in not really communicating. You're not meet cuting in the grocery store, and if you're on the treadmill, I'm not going to come over and ask you to take your AirPods out while you're trying to get your 8 minute mile to have a conversation with me. So, um, you know, if you meet someone at work, it's probably not a good idea, but I think a lot of people are, especially this day and age when you're working 40, 50, 55 hours, a lot of the times you end up meeting someone in a similar
Oh,
industry or a similar. And again, a lot of that comes from, I was a bartender for a while. I was, in the service industry. So you dated in the service industry. So, you just date similar scheduling to yours. I could have
that's interesting. It used to be a rule for us boomers that you do not, well, I can't say it exactly, but you don't poop where you eat.
And I'm sure you guys all obeyed it so well in that regard, where you don't poop where you eat. So, at the end of the day, like I said, if I work from 3 to 11, I can't date someone who works a 9 to 5.
Absolutely, absolutely. And journalists have it really hard too, because you can get called out in any minute for a big story, and the story always trumps, oh, I hate that word. Story always trumps the date. Amar, you're in college and you're with young people and you guys go out drinking and carousing every weekend. You
Going
meet
out
you
drinking,
meet
that's not really a thing here. More like getting
oh
trashed, more like getting trashed in your dorm with like three people. But yeah, I
so
guess you could call it that.
all
I
right,
guess you call
so
it going out to drink.
you have a girlfriend now, I happen to know. How did you guys meet?
How did we meet? This is actually interesting, yeah. So I have a friend who is 21, and when we try to acquire alcohol, this 21-year-old friend, he's a little bit of a dick. So he'll charge like $60 for like an $11 bottle of vodka.
So the women I talked to all mentioned dating apps. They use the Match.com and Harmony.com ad nauseum. You guys, none of you mentioned that. Don't use them?
Idea that like if I put in the app and like I don't want to sound like homophobic or anything like that, right? But like apps like can be like kind of I don't know how to explain it. They can be deceitful in a way with photos and the way technology works now. You can use AI in Photoshop to make like a gremlin look like the Queen of Jordan. So it's not really a problem I'm trying to have. So I just don't want to show up there and it's like a guy or something. So I don't know how
Jeff,
to
how
explain it.
Jeff, how about you? Do you ever use
Yeah.
dating apps? Have you used them?
I have used them in the past, and well, I find that some people, I myself again, I've been my whole career. It's a deal where you're telling the truth as a journalist, and I put my right age down. I put down my current pictures. I found that some of the women I've met been a little bit loose with that regard. But I also find that if some women, decide to leave the app, if they don't take their profiles down, the profiles stay up, and you might be interested in this person and you sort of show that interest, but that person will never hear because the company leaves the profile up, probably in a way to sort of make
Um,
a few more bucks. We look at all these attractive people we've got here, and this is somebody that will never get the message. Facebook's got a
um,
thing now where it's not a bad idea. People are on Facebook that are single, sort of chime in. Thing is that it sort of sends people your way that live out in Maine or oh, I don't know, Connecticut, 3 hours away, someplace in Vermont,
mhm.
and you might really hit it off on paper, but I'm not sure if I'd ever want to move 3 hours away, pack up the house and everything, and I'm not sure I'd want somebody to do the same for me. So I think it's not
Mhm.
fair in that respect.
Zach, how about you? Have you ever used dating apps?
Yeah, I mean, I actually mentioned in my first two answers here about using
Yep.
dating apps.
Yep.
I mean, I found dating apps to be no different than dating, just it's kind of at a hyper speed level with I mean, you used to go out to the bar and you talk to a couple people, and if you got a phone number, awesome. If you got denied, whatever, you just kind of went on to it. Dating app seems to be that, just at an
Oh, that's so funny.
exponential level. But like I said, I've met several people on dating apps that I've had long relationships with. I've met some that I've had healthy relationships with, and I've had some really bad dates. So it's been really no different than actual
Than
dating.
in person. Is there such a thing as blind dates anymore where a friend sets you up with someone you don't really know? Any
I
of
think that's
you?
I think it's kind of old school, and I think I really agree with that. I mean, there was a friend of mine once said, you need a yenta, someone will sort of fix you up with somebody, a friend. And that doesn't really seem to happen that much anymore. But if somebody says, I've got a friend that you might really like, you guys might hit it off. I've not really run into too many of those people, but I think if they were out there, it'd be a great thing to do. I have nothing against the dating apps, like the other guys were saying. I think they might work better for the younger set, the younger generations than maybe the older generation. But
Hmm.
I think having that personal connection, the go-between, would really be a big help.
The Yenta, yeah, I get it. I get it. Um, Amar, do you have any feelings about dating apps? You say they're deceitful. So how about blind dates? Do you
I just
trust your
don't.
friends?
Do I trust my friends? Huh, I actually have a horror story about this one, believe it or not. Uh,
Okay.
I actually showed up. Yeah, one of my friends, Dylan, he set me up with one of his friends. I show up, and he passes out from I don't know what it was, but she was just high, drunk. I don't know what it was. Dylan told me to go hang out with one of his deranged friends, and it didn't go in my favor. I'm mildly traumatized from it.
Ooh, that's
Uh,
awful.
yeah, it was really weird. Like, it's not traumatized as in like, oh my God, that was scary. It was just one of those things of like, I get that people like to party and do various types, copious amounts of various substances. But like, it's just not something I'm used to having grown up in the Middle East, spent time in
Hmm.
Singapore.
Hmm.
Like,
It
I
was
don't know.
just
Like,
just uncomfortable, really
it
uncomfortable.
just made me
Uh-huh.
really, really uncomfortable because I don't like being in situations where I don't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
Like, that gives me a lot of anxiety. So,
We
yeah.
are we are talking with three generations of men about the trials and tribulations of dating women in this case, may I mention. And we have a boomer and a millennial and a zoomer. So my next question was the most controversial when I was talking to women about dating, and that was if they had a bare minimum, the total lowest point at which you would accept going out with a man. And I mean, I had the lowest of all. It was basically they had to have all their limbs and all their teeth or a reasonable facsimile of both. But many of the women agreed that they didn't want to go out with bald men, and men were outraged by this. So I have to ask the question now, is there any minimum requirement that you have for going out with a woman? Zach?
I don't have a minimum or anything like that, but all I will say in this regard is that if in your dating profile or if you have a standard of I won't date someone under this height or with this hair, then you should be okay with a man asking you how much you weigh. It is the same thing. The difference is that men
Zach,
can't, no,
we
men
needed
can't
to hear
control
this.
their height. Men can't control their height. It's just something that they're born with. And it's something that they are judged upon and either swiped right or left on. And if that's the case, and if it's at to that superficial level and extreme, then you should be okay if a man asks you, okay, how much do you weigh?
So that's a roundabout way of saying no fat women.
No, I'm not saying that in any regard. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying if you are going to set a standard over something that is uncontrollable, then if someone responds with something that is controllable, you should not be offended
It
by it.
should be okay by it. All right, all right. Jeff,
I'd like to speak on this real quick, if that's okay.
you may think on it. I'm going to ask Jeff in the meantime. Do you have a minimum standard, Jeff?
Well, I understand what Zach is saying. I mean, in the past, if I've been online with some people, I do mention I am somewhat follically challenged, just so they know. Sometimes the pictures may not be, they may not look that way, but and on the same token, I agree. I mean, I would never ask a woman well, what is your measurements? Because if I'm going to be so forthcoming, perhaps you should be too. But no, to answer the question, I try to stay in reasonable shape, honest to God. And it is a struggle at age 69. I'm at the Y 3 or 4 times a week, trying to get back into running again. And not that I'm looking for a supermodel, nothing like that, but somebody that sort of takes reasonable care of themselves. That to me is something that I would hope to see. And I know Rosemary says, well, that means no fat people. It doesn't really mean that, but it does mean that you're trying to maintain your shape, because I think that's good for the self-esteem, and I think it's good for your health too.
Okay. Seems to me you're both saying no fat women, but that's okay. I withhold my judgment. Amar, have you thought on it? Do you have an answer for me?
Yeah, I very much have thought on it. Yeah. So as someone who's dating someone that goes to the gym every day or most days, like I think like I put in a reasonable amount of effort into going to the gym. And like my thing is also about the height thing, because like I'm not that tall. I'm like 5'7", 5'8". If I have a chick telling me that like, oh, why aren't you 6'1", I can't control how tall. I can control my vertical blessings from the Almighty. That's not my in my powers. But like you know
True.
what isn't in their powers? To get on the treadmill. It's just like having the willpower and the wherewithal to, go to the gym every now and then. So if I'm gonna get a headache about my height, I'm gonna be like, buddy, go to the gym. Like I'm done.
Mhm.
I'm not having it. Like I'm past that stage. Like I've dealt with that and it's been annoying and painful not having that shit. Like sorry.
Wow. Okay, here's one. The rules of dating. Mostly I mean money about this. Who pays? What's the
Mhm.
rules? When you ask somebody for a date, do you expect to pay? Do you expect to go Dutch? And how about if they do the asking? How does this work these days? Jeff, start with you. We'll go oldest to
Sure.
youngest here.
Um, if I ask somebody out today for a dinner, it's no question I'm paying the bill, and I've done that. We go out with a friend of mine occasionally. It's not really a romantic situation, but whenever I ask, I pay. Sometimes she says, "Can I leave the tip?" And if it's a small bill or whatever, sometimes I'll take it. I've got the whole thing. And if she asks me, well, sometimes she goes, "You got it last time, I'll get it this time." But for the most part, as a general rule, if I'm asking somebody out, I'm paying for it.
And if they ask you,
I will still volunteer to pay for it. But if she says, no, I asked you out, I'll pay. I will
oh,
not argue.
I have to say, I was married to a very cheap man. I love a man who pays. Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah.
Zach, how about you? What's the rules as you see them?
I mean, listen, again, if I ask you out on the first date, I'm going to pay. Appreciate just the faking of the going for the pocketbook. I really don't care if you have anything in there or not. Just fake it for me. Like,
Make the gesture.
yeah, seriously. Like, because I'm gonna say no, 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 and then I'll feel nice and everything like that. But like, it is disheartening when you're out on a date, whether it's a good date or a bad date, and when the check comes and they just start like avoiding eye contact with you. So it's just like, okay, that's fine. Like, just make the gesture.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and then once you're in a good, healthy relationship, it's a back and forth. I mean, again, the one good, healthy relationship I was in. We would go out maybe twice a week and I would pay once and she would pay once. It just depended on who picked the restaurant.
That seems fair. Amar, how about you?
Yeah, I have a fairly specific stance on this. As someone born and raised in the Middle East, you ask a girl out or like you ask a woman to go out with you, like she's gonna spend minimum like 2, 3 hours getting ready, looking good, looking presentable. And like I kind of feel like an idiot asking like a girl who's I'm interested in to like split the check. That's just not me. I don't know. I don't like it. If I'm asking you out on the first date, I'm paying. Actually, I don't even care if you ask me if you want to hang out, if you ask me to hang out and like I take you out, like and we end up going somewhere, yeah, I'm gonna end up paying. Yeah, that's just me though.
Yeah. One,
Interesting.
one other thing, by the way, just to add on to that, talking about first dates, sure, I asked you out, we're going to go out and I'm paying, this kind of thing. But there's nothing wrong with, you haven't got to go to a fancy restaurant where 2 or 3 glasses of wine or 2 beers and hors d'oeuvres and a full dinner is going to set you back a little bit. There's nothing wrong with going out for I don't know, a milkshake, a walk in the park or someplace. Something there, you say, let's just have an ice cream sundae. And it's no problem for the guy to pay that. I don't care who it is.
Is it scary to get rejected when you ask somebody out and they say no? As a as a girl in my generation, girls never asked men out. We never had this problem at all. You did, Jeff. It always was you. It had to be you.
That's right.
So is it awful to be rejected?
You know, that's something I was thinking about before this podcast. And, you know, when you're 17 or 18 and you're up in your parents' room using the phone because you want to be away from the rest of the family to call up the girl you just met at the dance and ask her out, you still get those butterflies 60 years later, 50 years later. It's the same feeling that you're going to call up somebody and ask, hey, would you like to go out for something or go out for a date? So that feeling never changes. So there, in the back of your head, there is that thing about rejection, but it's also our training as journalists. Well, you're going to get an answer one way or the other, and it'll be over in just a minute or so. But you still get that feeling, I think, when you're asking somebody out and you're not sure what the answer is going to be.
The butterflies in your stomach. That's a good way to put it. Zach, how about you? Do you fear rejection in this whole dating stuff?
No, because like Jeff just said, I mean, and this comes from the profession as well. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. I think nowadays, what's more annoying or frustrating, especially when it comes to dating in the digital age, is the idea of ghosting. Is talking to someone for a couple of days, asking them out, and then just never hearing from them again, which is quite common. I think you talk to someone, it's a good conversation, so it's like, oh, hey, let's go do something, and then you never hear from them. Which, again, if I ask you out and you say no, all right, cool, on to the next one. It's the just disappearing out into thin air, which is just like, okay, like a little immature and frustrating, and clearly it wouldn't have been a good situation anyway then.
Yeah, I that is awful. That's just rude. It's just plain bad behavior, isn't it? Amar, how about you? Do you have any fear of rejection when it comes to dating?
Really, no, I couldn't care less personally. It really depends on the person, but like, yeah, like because I don't know if I'm gonna like if it's someone I don't know and I just go up to them and I find them attractive, I'm like, hey, what's up? And they're like not interested or like they have body language that seems uninterested. Like, all right, cool. Like Zach said, on to the next. But that's just me.
Oh God, I see a generational difference here, Jeff. Do you?
Yes,
Like
do.
I don't like to persist because like it just shows like I'm a low value male if I'm just like persisting and persisting and persisting because yeah, I'm not going to I don't want the other person to think I don't have options, you know what I mean?
That's interesting. It's your image.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just a matter of my honor.
All right, I have to bring this up, and this is a real girl question, and indeed it comes from the girls talking about dating, and that's toxic masculinity. It's much in politics these days, but the women we talked to all said that they had encountered that men who were acting a certain way because they thought that that was how they were supposed to, and it was offensive and kind of scary in some cases. None of you have that, I think. I certainly didn't pick you for that, but are you aware of it, and how do you address that? How do you make a woman feel at ease that this is not you? Zach, we'll start with you to begin with here.
I mean, what do you mean that make her feel at ease? Could you be a little bit more elaborate in that?
Can you show a woman quickly that you are not a jerk? You're not a show off. You're not showing off for her that you're a man in the sense of strong and sure of yourself. Some of I guess, showing the confidence that Amar is talking about when it's like, well, if a woman rejects me, I just move on. That sort of is what I'm getting at. That is not toxic masculinity. He's not angry at her. He's not going to beat her up. There's no threat there. Strength. I'm just sorry, I'm talking too much and I want the men to talk about this.
I mean, listen, you can just be yourself. And they're either going to like you or they're not going to like you. And you can't really do anything other than that. And if you're not yourself, I think people kind of figure that out pretty quickly. And I mean, I'll say in like this regard, when it comes to things that are romantic versus things that are creepy, again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. Look at every quote unquote romantic thing that has been done in, rom-coms throughout history. If the main character doesn't like the person, then it's pretty creepy. Ryan Gosling hanging off a Ferris wheel in The Notebook. Oh, it's so romantic. And Rachel McAdams went on a date with him. No, he said, if you don't go out on a date with me, I'm going to fall to my death. Like, it's
Like
kind of
what?
creepy. 16 candles. Let me stand outside your window with a boombox, which for years was the most romantic gesture of all time, other than it's stalking, it's trespassing.
Sounds like a
Sound
very quick way.
pollution.
Yeah, it sounds like
Again,
such a quick way
it's
to get
all in the
arrested.
eye of the beholder. If anything a man does, if the person getting that, whether it's a man or a female, anything that someone does in the eye of romance, if that person likes that other person and accepts the gesture, then it's beautiful and it's romantic and you tell stories about it. But if they don't like the other person, then it's creepy and they talk to their girlfriends about it.
I'm thinking of that song by Sting, Every Step You Take, which is supposed to be one of the best love songs of all time. And it's really stalking. Every
Yeah.
step you take, I'm going to be watching
Yeah.
you. It's like, yeah.
Right.
So but Zach, that's not really what I'm saying. I like that whole line, but this is like girls, for example, are told, don't act too smart, don't act too bossy, giggle at their
No,
jokes.
just be yourself. Just be
Yeah.
yourself. Just be
Right.
yourself. Because at the end of the day, and this is, I guess this is what I tell people. At the end of the day, this date's going to go one of two ways. You're going to really have a great time and you're going to want to do this again, or it's going to suck. And an hour from now, half from now, you're going to have had a nice meal for free, a couple of drinks, and then you're going to go home and never talk to me again. So just be yourself.
Okay, Amar, jump in here. What do you think about all this?
Sorry, I completely missed what Zach said, but the fear of rejection, or not the fear of rejection, the toxic masculinity thing. I feel like as long as you're just not a dick, people will get the message. I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like being like, "Oh, hi, I'm Amar. I'm not a dick." That just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't seem. It seems counterintuitive. It's
It's just how you act and they have to pick up on it.
just how you act. If they pick up on it, great. If they don't pick up on it, on to the next. Like,
So Jeff, how about you? How do you project I'm a nice guy and I'm not toxic?
Well, I'm a little old school. These other guys may disagree with this, but yet again, we're from the reporting game. We're used to talking to people. Meeting somebody for the first time for a lot of people, that's wow. I'm kind of shy around new people, but not us because we've talked to people we don't know all the time. If somebody I meet for the first time, well, sit down. I'm Jeff. Thanks an awful lot for coming out tonight, and order a couple drinks. And the thing I'm going to say is, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, we've seen each other online or someplace, but I'd love to hear more about you. And let her tell a couple stories. And I'm going to try to project that I'm not a creep. I've heard from some women where they've been out on dates where the guy is right up front. I am only in this for a sexual relationship. That is all I want.
Ooh.
When you hear this, it gives our species a bad name. And that's the last thing I want to do.
Okay, so when is it okay to ask for sex or to expect sex? First date, second date, fifth date?
I think it's got to happen naturally. I think you've got to both come to the same thinking at the same time. I would never ever sort of say, well, it's been 6 months, it's been 3-4 weeks. It's about time for us to do something.
But would you actually wait 6 months?
Oh, I've waited longer than that for anything to happen, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and we're just friends. But I've always found that kind of a tough thing to sort of not demand, but to talk about. I think it's got to happen
Yeah,
naturally.
you can't demand it, but there's expectations too. How about you, Zach? Do you have expectations of putting out after a certain amount of time?
No, I think it comes at a certain extent. You just know it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen.
Right. Right.
I mean, I can tell pretty quickly whether or not you're going to be friend zoned or ghosted or anything like that. But I mean, I guess the one thing I'll say, and I'm not defending anyone for just coming out and saying on a date like, "Hey, I'm just here for sex," but I mean, it's refreshing honesty. I'll take that over, hey, let me milk you for 2, 3, 4 meals. And there's no, not sexual future, just future in general. Like, if you don't think that this is going to be an enjoyable second date and third date and fourth date, like I would rather just not go on them. And whether there's sex at the end of it or not, it's just.
The reporter in me is feeling like you all are being very careful with my questions here. So let me be more direct.
Listen, hold on, Rosemary. I've had sex on a first date, and I've had sex after 7 dates. There's no
Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted. The range. That's good.
Things happen. My point is I would just honesty is more appreciated than anything else.
I disagree a little bit, Zach. Just let me get that in there. Some guy that says in the first date, I'm just here for a sexual relationship, that sort of rubs me the wrong way. If a guy says that, says, well, just go find yourself a sex doll, man.
Well, what if the woman, Jeff, what if the woman says that?
Well, I've never run into that situation. If she said that, I'd say, well, you want to do it right away? Don't want to get to know each other first, a little bit,
Amar, jump in here.
I gotta just, okay, yeah. So, I'm in college, so things like that do happen. Like, I've not done that because, like, when guys do it, it's kind of seem like a dick.
Okay, we're talking things like that. We are talking about sex on a first date. Am I right?
Yeah, sex on a first date. It's just, I'm not gonna ask, but if it happens, it happens.
You don't say no.
That's fair. That is fair. That is fair. I think.
Like, I'm not gonna ask, but in the event it happens, like, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, I don't want to have sex with you. I wouldn't have asked you out if I didn't find you attractive in multiple ways.
There's one
Anyways,
thing, when it happens naturally, it's a lot different than demanding it on the first date.
yeah, like I know people on campus who are like straight up will ask for it, and like these are some of the most hated males on campus. So it's just like one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question is your idea of an ideal date. And I don't mean one that you're planning so she loves it, because women are pretty specific about what they want. It involves candy and sorry, not candy, candles and romance and element of surprise, blah, blah, blah. But what's the ideal date from the male point of view? Zach, what would make you happy if you went out on a girl and did the following? What would be ideal?
It was a good conversation. Again, like everyone has these standards or made up fantasies because of what they've seen in the movies. Again, if we could go out to have dinner or a walk in the park or a milkshake or mini golf or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like, just is it a good conversation? Are we going to be able to enjoy each other's company? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you want someone that you can have a conversation that just flows naturally with.
Okay, fair enough. Amar, what's your idea of the perfect night out with a woman?
Perfect night out. Usually like after you both get like a little trashed and like her friend says she's gonna go to her room so you can like take her on a drive. That's usually ideal situation in college for me.
Go for a ride, huh?
Yeah, like
Okay.
quick little 0.03 drive with like Simon's Rock. Hopefully, I hope Zach or Jeff, neither of you are like state troopers, but yeah, a quick 0.03 drive,
It makes me feel old just listening to Amar, I have to say. And Jeff, how about you? What's your idea of an ideal date?
Ideal date, probably the second or third, actually, because I'm a big proponent to entertaining at home. I know a nice little restaurant up in Albany. Well, actually, it's Cardona's Market. If Cardona's one of your advertisers, terrific food. Buying a bunch of these things, put them in a small couple crock pots. Sure, some candles are around the place, a little soft jazz. Fireplace is going if it's wintertime. Sit down, talk, conversation, leisurely dinner without waiters and waitresses hovering over you, anything like that. A little more conversation after dinner, dessert. If there's a kiss goodnight, great. A couple hugs, fine. That's my idea of a really perfect evening where you've got a lot of good conversation and it's a nice evening. That's all it comes down to me for me. Like Zach was saying before about conversation, key thing. If I can entertain at home and she's going for, I know some women are saying, I'm not going to go to the guy's house. So that's why I would say it's after a second or third date type thing. But that's what I would love to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess I have to add as well that my ideal date, I'd have to say April 25th, because it's not too hot, it's not too cold, and all you need is a light jacket.
Very funny. Very funny. We are talking with men from three different generations about the ins and outs of dating. And we've come almost to the end. My last question is this. What is it that women don't know about dating you that they ought to? Amar, you're pretty out there. Is there anything they don't know about doing it right, dating you?
On campus, I have a certain image. I don't understand why. I don't get it. Like, I think like racial generalizations are pretty common because like this is a very homogenous campus.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, like me, just a little bit of background on this. They put me and all the other people, all the other Persians on campus on one floor, and the others are they're a little bit feral, to say the least. Like we all get a bad rep, so kind of
Really?
sucks. Oh yeah.
The wild Middle Easterners, is that what you're
No, get
saying?
this. I came back to my room. Yeah. You know what happened? One of them smoked a cigarette in his room. The oldest one, 24, by the way, smoked a cigarette in his room. Sprinklers went off, and there was ankle length water over break, and all my
Oh
stuff
my
was
gosh.
drenched when
Oh
I
my
got
gosh.
in. And yeah, I had to get moved to a different room. So spent the whole day doing that today. That's fun.
So you're saying you're painted into a stereotype.
It's like very spoiled, like careless, reckless, low IQ individuals. It's not very nice.
No, that's sad. Okay, Zach, how about you? What do people, women not know about dating that they ought to?
You'll have to ask the women I dated. Again, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be on this podcast.
And Jeff, how about you? The two men in this podcast who have dated the longest but are still single. And so is it, do you feel like a failure or is it just a process?
Oh,
How do you,
oh,
sorry, that sounds harsh.
Probably
I don't mean
didn't
it
until
that
you
way.
just called him one there, Rosemary.
I didn't mean to. It
We
didn't
can
come
have
out
Super
that.
quite
nice of
the,
you.
it didn't come out quite the way I meant it,
You
but
know,
help
there
me
are
out here.
there are other single people in this boat, a lot of single people, and you don't feel anything like that. People say, "Oh, you're too picky." No, no, you're really waiting for that one true person, I think, because I've seen in friends that I've got that have been married and it hasn't worked out, or relationships that fizzle badly. Well, I haven't had to go through that, so you know, you're still hopeful, I guess. The thing about me, I don't know, I'm easygoing. You know, it's a deal where sometimes I think women try to add a guy as an accessory. You must love my horses, you must love my dogs and my cats. You must be available to go mountain climbing or windsurfing with me every weekend. Well, I'm not sticking around on a cold day watching old movies, something like that. These are the things that I like to do, but I'm open for anything. I'm easygoing, but I just don't want to be an accessory, I guess. One other thing, Rosemary, if I could sneak this in here,
Of
I'm old
course.
school. I'm old school, so I know the internet is where single people are sort of all herded to go to these days. I've been to the YMCA on occasion and said to the Y people, "Do you guys ever think about having a singles night?" You know, as people that are interested in working out, they won't go for it. Same thing with the library. People like to read, bring a favorite book. All these single people come in, not interested.
Wow, that's interesting.
The things like this, I mean, I've met some nice people through the YMCA.
Right.
Some people say, well, women say, where do you find single guys? Go to the Home Depot. If I find a single woman that's attractive and I go to the Home Depot and I approach her, it's like I'm stalking her. So you really gotta
Yeah.
watch what you're asking for. I know it's too long an answer, but
No, it's
those
a
are a
good
bunch of
answer.
things to wrap up with.
It is a good answer. And so if I get calls from any women who listen in on this and they want your numbers, if you don't want me to give it out, send me a note later and I'll protect your identities. We
Well,
end our podcast with the toast. And tonight I want to toast men. I used to tell my boys growing up that they could not be mean to girls, that if
right,
a girl
right.
liked them, which of course is anathema in high school and junior high, and embarrass them by letting their attraction be known, that they had to be sweet about it because their only fault
Mhm.
was that they like you, which is a lovely thing. And so I love that you guys have thought about dating and that you're willing to come on and talk to us about it and tell us what's hard and what's good and how to make it better.